Welcome to Rewiring Health. If you're a high-achieving woman feeling trapped in the endless cycle of guilt and exhaustion from always putting others first, then this is your sanctuary. I'm Dr. Kelly Kessler, your dedicated empowerment mentor, and I'm here to tell you that it's time to reclaim your peace, health, and happiness. Imagine waking up every day feeling energized and unapologetically living for yourself. Together, we'll break down the walls that have been holding you back and unlock the vibrant, unstoppable force that you truly are. It's time to put yourself first, embrace your authentic self, and live a life that's not just endured, but celebrated. Now let's dive in. Have you ever noticed your skin reflects your stress? I used to struggle with mine, dry, dull, reactive, until I started pairing nervous system regulation with products that actually honor your body. That's why I love Milk and Butterflies. They handcraft every formula with 100% organic ingredients and powerful aromatherapy oils. They aren't just products for your skin, they're rituals that restore hydration, resilience, and calm even in the busiest seasons of our life. You can try them for yourself and feel the difference. Head to Milk and Butterflies and use my promo code Dr. Kelly for free shipping. That's DRKELLY for free shipping. Also, check out the link in the description for the podcast. What if your body already knows how to heal without having to think about it? We spend so much energy managing stress from the neck up, but in this episode, we're flipping the script. Richmond Heath, founder of TRE Australia, reveals how the body's natural tremor reflex, the same one we've been taught to suppress, can actually release deep tension, calm your nervous system, and reset the sense of safety from the inside out. If you've ever felt like no amount of meditation, journaling, or positive thinking can quiet the overwhelm, this conversation might be the missing piece. This is a two-part episode, and in today's episode, you're going to learn about patterns of exhaustion, you're going to learn about TRE, tension patterning, and how shaking can help you release them. You're also going to learn about how to take the first step to start releasing traumatic patterns within your body and allow yourself to navigate life with greater ease and greater freedom. All right, well, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so honored to have Richmond Heath on the podcast today, so thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks, Kelly. It's a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, I am looking forward to this. We're just chatting a little bit, and there's gonna be so many things that come through for the listeners and anyone who's listening right now. But what I want to start with, because I always love how people's journeys evolve, but do you mind sharing your backstory? What led you to the people you serve and what you do today?
Yeah, so my backstory is very similar to yours, Kelly, where in my late 20s or my 20s and 30s, my body was basically just grinding down. I'd always use sport and exercise as a way of maintaining my well-being and my mental health. And I got to the point where I had chronic Achilles tendonitis, so I couldn't run, couldn't even swim and kick my feet anymore. I had chronic shoulder impingement, so I couldn't lift my arms above my shoulder, so I couldn't go to the gym and do all that sort of stuff. And then I also had two really significant periods of low back pain where I'd sort of hurt my back. Many years later, I only discovered they were both within 6 weeks of breaking up with my first two really serious true love girlfriends, but I had no idea of that. And as
Yeah.
a physiotherapist, the model I'd always received was, look, this is just mechanical. It's, your muscles are weak, they're tight, and all that sort of thing. Um, and one of my brothers sent me off to a Vipassana 10-day silent meditation course where basically all you really do is you just constantly meditate into the feelings in your body. And I did a number of those courses, and really what changed for me was at one of those courses, my body started to spontaneously move, like started off just rolling, sort of leaning forwards when I was sitting, and I was thinking, that's weird, I'm not doing that. And so I just observed it, and then it was about to fall forwards, and then it jolted, and then it slowly started to move back. And I was like, hang on, I'm not doing this. This is not me moving. This is just
Yeah.
happening. And so I snuck back into the hall late one night on my own because you're not meant to move in these meditations. And I just observed my body, and then my body started to move itself around. And, over the course of a couple of days of exploring this spontaneous movement, I didn't have any concept or understanding about it. All I knew was my body was moving. It felt fantastic. After a couple of days, I was able to do a one-handed handstand and press my body weight up and down. So
Wow.
everything I'd learned about chronic pain and about muscular strength in my physical therapy degree, it all went out the window. I didn't have any framework. So, you know, my back pain was so bad that there were times where I couldn't go up and down stairs because of the weakness in my leg. I had chronic pain, waking me up at night constantly. So the biggest change for me was many years later. Then I got introduced to TRE and someone gave me a DVD. They said, check this out, do these exercises. I did these exercises, had this tiny little vibration in my legs. I didn't think much about it. And then I went to bed. The next morning when I woke up, I was like, oh my God, what's just happened? I slept like a log. I hadn't slept like that for 30 years.
Wow.
And I'd always, when I'd sit down in the mornings, I'd often have my heels off the ground. It's like, people with chronic tension in their calves, kids with autism will often have that tension pattern. And I'd had that chronic Achilles stuff for years. And I'll never forget sitting on the toilet and just thinking, oh my God, what's happened? Because it felt like my heels felt like they were a foot through the bottom of the floor.
Mhm.
So all that tension and pain in my calves had just completely let go in a way that no other form of body work or exercise or Pilates or stretching or massage or foam rolling, nothing had ever touched. And so that was the key moment for me where all of a sudden I had this way of finding relief in my body, which I'd never found before. And at that point, I had no understanding about what it was or could explain it or had no trauma-informed sort of model for it. I just knew that it was working, it was doing something really profound. And so I really went from there.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing because it's like those experiences are so transformational when you have this one way of looking at life and looking at your body and have this lens, especially when you're trained as a physiotherapist, like you have that one lens that you have, and then you have this transformational experience, and you like, it's like everything changes. And I had very similar experience, like lived with chronic back pain for years and like did all the things, and it was like frustrating because you know the body, you know all the things to do, and you're like, this is not like working long term. So it's amazing to understand like there's so much more to this, and then to have that experience that you had. It's
Yeah,
profound.
yeah, absolutely. It was a major paradigm shift for me because, as you say, in my physiotherapy degree, it was like, oh, it's all just tight muscles and that. But it was
Mhm.
never explained to me, well, why are these muscles tight? What's underlying these chronic patterns of stress and tension? And that was a key part of the journey for me, was getting this trauma-informed model about where was this tension and pain and stress. And I never realized for most of my life I'd lived with high functioning anxiety. So on
Mhm.
the outside I was functioning, but on the inside I was burning out. It was like I was struggling to keep up. And that was really in my 30s. I had a partner, I had a young child, and it was the stresses of trying to keep up that
Mhm.
really got me to the point where I was breaking down.
Yeah.
And one of the key elements was because I felt so bad, so exhausted, so low energy, so much pain, so much tension,
Mhm.
I didn't have any really healthy ways of managing that. I could eat and distract myself. I used to use exercise to feel good, but that was limited and it caught up with me and I couldn't keep doing it. And that's why finding this innate pathway in my body that was able to release the stress and tension on its own without me having to do anything was such a major relief, because I finally had something that was a healthy way, and an internal resource that was freely available. And the great thing for me was I didn't have to do it. Like, I'd spent my whole life thinking, and I'd been trained that way. It's like, it's my responsibility to fix this and make myself better. I mean, that's, people come to see me as a physiotherapist because I'm going to fix it. So I'd done the same thing. The problem was me. It was
Mhm.
that I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't meditating enough. I wasn't doing enough breath work. I wasn't eating that. I wasn't. So it was always this pressure of like, I have to fix this. And it
Mhm.
just didn't work. And there was
Yeah.
a huge amount of relief when, at that very first meditation course, where this sense when I got out of the way and
Mhm.
I didn't try to do anything and I let my body lead my process, there was just this immense relief of like, oh my God, my body can actually unwind this pattern in a way that I can never do. So it took this burden that it's all my fault and I have to find the answers. They were already, we talk about sort of already being inside us, but it wasn't a metaphor. It was literally that this spontaneous movement reflex is and was the pathway to releasing all those patterns.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like when we clench and we try to control everything, it's like our fists are so tightly clenched that we can't receive anything in that position. And it's like a lot of that has to do with safety. We have to be in a place of safety to be able to receive things and allow things to bubble up to the surface. Do you think that played a role, like where that came through in that 10-day meditation, that your body finally felt safe to express it?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I first started doing TRE, I'll never forget this experience. So I'd been learning about this trauma-informed model, like why is my body not feeling safe? And of
Mhm.
course, it's not conscious because I'm in a room with my family and that. But
Mhm.
I'll never forget. I was at a workshop. It must have been 3 or 4 months after I'd started doing this TRE practice and regular tremoring. My body was starting to let go and calm down. And I was standing in front of someone, just talking, and maybe it was at a lunch break or something, I can't remember. And I was talking to them, and I remember feeling that I felt a bit tense. I didn't really know why. So I deliberately took a deep breath and sort of tried to relax myself. And I literally, Kelly, in that moment, turned sideways and went, holy shit. And the reason I did it was because in that moment, my pelvic floor let go and relaxed. It felt like my bum had sort of hit the floor.
Mhm.
Now, prior to doing this work with TRE, I'd been teaching Pilates full time. So I had done a million pelvic floor contractions. I was teaching people about their pelvic floor and I did that. But in this moment, what I discovered was that my pelvic floor had been squeezed on for my entire life
Mhm.
and I didn't even know about it. I didn't know I had anxiety. I didn't know I had high functioning anxiety. All I knew was I had sacroiliac joint problems and chronic sciatic nerve pain and da da da. It was a mechanical thing.
Mhm.
And so that was really like the start of this journey of recognizing and importantly for me that it's the chronic tension that I don't know about that's having such a significant impact. So, people who are listening to this now, we can be sitting here going, no, I haven't got any pain, I haven't got any tension, I feel good. But just like the classic iceberg story, 90% of the tension patterns are outside our conscious awareness.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they are what is driving that sense of whether our nervous system feels safe or whether we don't, and how our body tension levels are. And that is ultimately, hugely driving our behavior and our experience of life. So for me, that's that sense of the iceberg, that most of the tension in our system, estimates are that we only have access to 5 or 10% of our
Mhm.
neuromuscular system. It's that unconscious tension which is generally driving our patterns and our behavior and our experiences of life. And it's why no matter what we do consciously and cognitively, so often it doesn't seem to work. Is because, like me, I had no idea that my pelvic floor was squeezed on.
Yeah.
And even, people listening now, it's like we can be feeling okay, but if we get a massage therapist to come and put a trigger point in our shoulders or our glutes or our stomach or our diaphragm, we'll be like, oh my God, there's all this tension there, but we don't even know it's there having an impact. And again, this is why working with the body's own way of unwinding that tension pattern below our conscious awareness is so significant because it's something that we can't do cognitively.
Absolutely. It's amazing how we just accumulate that tension throughout our lives, and that's why it just becomes normalized. Like, doesn't everybody feel like this? Does everyone have their shoulders up by their ears? Like, I've lived with this for years, and it's like a term I came across when I was just starting this, and like really my own journey was like somatic motor amnesia, and where your body doesn't realize, just as you're speaking about, like it doesn't realize the tension that's there because it is under the level of consciousness, and it's so profound that, that's all going on below the surface, and we're wondering why we're experiencing what we're experiencing when that's what is happening.
Yeah, that's right. And I sometimes like to joke with people and I say, okay, just take a moment, feel into your body. Now, I want you to relax an area of your body that you can't feel. I want
Hmm.
you to find some tension in your body that you're not connected to, and I want you to relax it. Well, of course,
Yeah.
the point of that is going, we can't consciously relax something if we're not connected to it.
Yeah.
And that's that sense is whenever we've got this chronic muscular tension that we often don't feel until we're stretching or someone's massaging us and we're feeling into it, that is basically what's the foundation for the state of our nervous system.
Hmm.
but we're generally only aware of how am I feeling today psycho-emotionally? Oh, consciously I'm feeling okay. Emotionally I'm feeling okay. But those patterns that are deeper in our organism, in the nervous system, in the neuromuscular system, generally that's what's driving our experience. And the common pattern around exhaustion, you know, the exhaustion is being generated by the nervous system. It's a survival response. Shut down, protect energy. It's over, things are overwhelming, it's too much. So the body's generating a state of low energy. But of course, because that's happening, subcortically, we might say, which means below the prefrontal cortex, it's not part of our cognitive part of our brain, deep in the brain stem. um, we don't necessarily have easy access to it. And even if we do things to mobilize our energy and generate our energy, if that pattern is not changing at the organic nervous system level, then all of those efforts are only ever temporary short-term fixes. And eventually, while we get excited about, oh, I've been doing this breathwork course and I'm really pumped up, and after it's feeling great. And then after 4 months, we're exhausted again. Or I've started meditating, and that when the patterns don't change in the organism so that organically our body is generating the energy, then eventually, those things catch up with us and we find, oh, here's another thing that I've tried that just hasn't worked. Now, let me be really clear. I'm not saying that all those practices are not useful and valuable. They absolutely are. But for everything we can consciously control, then all our consciously directed practices, which is 95% of our well-being practices, are going to be useful. But for everything that's in the unconscious that we don't have that direct cognitive access to, then that's where this tremoring reflex or the spontaneous movement reflex is so profound. By adding that together, it's going to give you greater access to have more effect with the cognitively directed techniques like meditation and exercise and breath work and everything else we do consciously.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like our patterns are almost like the thermostat. Like we can increase the heat manually, but it's going to come back down to that level of what the patterns are. So those practices will help temporarily, but then again, it's going
Yep.
to settle itself back down to whatever it's set at. And it's so profound. I would love to have you talk about TRE and what does that
Mm.
look like, for someone who's not aware of it. Can you, say what TRE is and how do you
Yeah.
start to integrate that into your routine?
Yeah. So TRE it originally just stood for tension and trauma release exercises. And in a nutshell, what it involves is deliberately invoking spontaneous shaking and trembling and sometimes pandiculation, which is like fascial stretches or your body moving through space like a yawn. And the thing that's so wonderful about it is that we all experience this spontaneous shaking and trembling. It's part of our life. So, for example, as a young child, you might be at school and you have to read a poem and your little hands are shaking. Now,
Mhm.
we just go, oh, that's stress and anxiety. Maybe you've come across or you've had a traumatic event or a car accident, or you come across someone who's shaking on the side of the road. We've all been told that's shock. You've got to put a blanket on and warm them up and stop that. And commonly, for women, the vast majority of women will have some kind of experience of spontaneous shaking and trembling during or after birth. And generally, if you're lucky, they'll say, oh, that just happens. We don't really know why. But people sometimes get medicated or held down to try and prevent it. So in our Western society, we have misunderstood and pathologized that, when we're shaking and trembling, as long as we haven't got a neurological disorder like Parkinson's or epilepsy or something, but separate to that, that we think that when you're shaking, that means I'm scared and that I'm anxious or that I'm in shock. And the simple reframe is that shaking is not part of our stress or trauma response. Like, think about this. If I'm standing at the front of um, you know, a room full of people and I'm speaking and my hands are shaking, is that helping my body to fight or to flee? It's obviously not.
Mhm.
And is it helping my body to freeze and immobilize and prevent move? It's not. The shaking and the trembling is the way the body recovers. Literally, when we have that surge of adrenaline or our muscles are all sort of tense and tight in the freeze response, the shaking is the way the body uses the adrenaline. So adrenaline doesn't make us shake. People do a base jump or whatever, and they're like, oh my God, or a bungee jump, and they're like, oh, I'm shaking because of the adrenaline. The adrenaline is not there to make you shake. The adrenaline there is to give you the energy to have a behavioral fight flight response. The shaking is the most efficient way for our mammalian organs, because we're all mammals and mammals have this response. It's evolved, over millions of years. the shaking is the most energy and safe way for the body to use up that adrenaline. So the shaking is a recovery response. It's a way that the muscular system releases that chronic tension and bracing that we have. At the end of the day, you come home from work, the shoulders are all tight.
Mhm.
Now, that's not a conscious process. None of us are squeezing our shoulders or tightening up our piriformis or our glutes or sucking in our digestive system. None of that is happening consciously. And the beautiful magic here is that the human organism has evolved with a similar, completely unconscious, automatic, spontaneous way of coming out of those stress and trauma responses. And that's the shaking and the trembling. It's just that in Western culture, we've learnt to suppress it. For your listeners who've got kids, you'll start seeing this in kids' books everywhere, like the ugly duckling was trembling with fear. So
Mhm.
we've all just associated with shaking is a sign of anxiety. Shut it down. We're out of control. And so simply reframing this is a huge paradigm shift for people. The classic example is, someone says, "Oh my God, I'm starting to have a panic attack. My hands are shaking." We think that the shaking is part of the panic, but the
Mhm.
shaking is the discharge of the panic. And once people understand that and get that, they'll often find panic attacks fall away. It doesn't mean that they don't have a response and their body
Mhm.
starts to tremble, but they'll be like, wow, oh, this is calming me down. Let's let this happen more fully and more freely. And it breaks that cycle because we're thinking the shaking is the panic. I've got to lock it down.
Mhm.
So with TRE, we just use simple exercises like the most simple thing, lying on your back, lifting your knees up and holding your legs to connect to the shaking in the same way that if anyone has ever done yoga or you've been to the gym and you hold a muscle a certain position and your muscles start to shake. So we use this muscle effort to deliberately invoke the shaking. And it tends to start off as a little shake or a vibration or as a wobble. But then the body will start to generate movement wherever it needs to. So someone might find their hands start to shake, someone else's eyelids might to flicker, someone else's hips might start to rotate, someone else's ankle might start to, wobble and vibrate. And so by doing that and then teaching people, hey, even though you're letting this movement happen, you can take conscious control of it and stop it whenever you want. So
Mhm.
people learn to self-regulate it. So they're going, hey, I'm not out of control. I'm
Mhm.
surrendering and letting go. I can let my body move. I can let it shake and tremble. But as soon as I don't want it to, then I just take conscious control. And so with that empowering skill of self-regulating it, then people go, hey, I can learn how to let go and surrender and let my body shake and move and release tension and literally, shake us back to life.
Yeah, it's so empowering because just having that knowledge of like, this is my body's natural process, it takes that fear response out of people. Like, oh my gosh, I need to stop because or something bad's gonna happen. Or like it's just knowing that like your body is innately able to discharge that is so empowering when you're going through something like that. And it's like you look at the animal kingdom, you see like a lion chasing its prey, and then the animal gets away, and then the first thing it does is like shake it off. Like you can see it, dogs do it all the time. It's like amazing that you can see this in so many realms, but for humans, we've thought that that is part of like something that shouldn't be happening or is just contributing to the fear response. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. I liken it, Kelly, to the shaking and the spontaneous movement. Well, and
Mhm.
we use the term neurogenic in TRE. It just means that the nervous system is generating the movements. It's not just because of muscle fatigue. And I'm not, it's different from if I consciously shake my body. That's
Mhm.
useful,
Yeah.
but this is something other where the body is generating the movement. And I liken it to being it's an emergency exit out of your room.
Mhm.
And the thing in our culture is when we suppress and contain that from a very young age,
Mhm.
like if anyone's got dogs, you see them shaking all the time. And as
Mhm.
soon as they do that shake, it changes the direction that their heart rate is going in. It's heading up and they're getting stressed. As soon as they do that little 2-second shake, their heart rate changes direction and they start to calm down. But as a culture in the West, we've completely pathologized it. So it's like we've locked the emergency exit. So, in my example, I'm going, I've got all this tension and all it, which, ends up becoming chronic pain. How do I get rid of it? I'm trying to get rid of it from the outside. I'm trying to numb it out. I'm trying to eat. I'm trying to distract myself. I'm trying to do exercise. And exercise is useful, but it has a limit because I can only exercise to the level of that my cognitive mind will allow me. And so this is where, when we've locked and bolted closed the emergency exit, it's like that stress and tension can't get out of us. And so no matter what we do, it eventually catches up with us. And the beautiful thing is, and this is why I love this work so much, is because it's about empowering people. Instead of saying, hey, you need to come and see me every week for a massage and I'll fix up your neck pain and it's going, hey, once you learn how to access this reflex or shaking or trembling response, you've got it for the rest of your life. It's your birthright to know this. And this is how you access it. This is how you regulate it. And then basically, I sometimes say to people, so now just go away, keep using it for the rest of your life. Get in touch with me if you have any problems using it. But every time we let the body move itself, it literally just peels away another layer of the onion. So what excites me, and I know in your podcast you talk a lot about progress, because when we're really struggling, we're all looking for the silver bullet. We're like, oh my God, I did this thing and everything is perfect. And I haven't had to change. I haven't had to change the way I live or think or move or deal with my emotions, anything like that. But what I'm really passionate about, Kelly, is the direction that this shaking response moves us in. So when I run classes, rather than saying, right, okay, who's magically had their pain disappear, and that happens, people go, oh my God, I had this pain and it's gone. But what I'm more interested in is I'll say, right, what direction has this little minute, these 20 or 30 minutes of shaking moved your system in? And people will go, oh, I feel more calm. I feel more relaxed. I've got more energy. I feel more alive. I'm more connected to my body. So I'm like, great. Now, if 20 or 30 minutes of that has given you that response, every time you do it and you use it, it's going to unwind you further and further. So people have been using this, it becomes a lifelong. I don't like to use the word practice because it just happens so easily. It's not something you have to do. You don't have to make it happen. You just let it happen. You can be lying in bed before you go to sleep. But what's exciting is that every time we use it, we unwind, knowing that in 5 years, there's going to be more freedom and more new freedom because the organism naturally has a desire and an innate impulse in it to make itself as relaxed and efficient and as functional and as healthy as possible. So when it's like, step into the current of it, the body is going to just keep leading this journey where we get more connected to ourselves, more alive, more embodied, more authentic, more expressive, and we're able to feel more pleasure and more joy in life, not just get rid of our stress and tension.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you use the example of that like emergency door shut because it's so like I talk about that too, like in a different way, but like when the door is shut and you just see like a tiny crack, you're like, oh my gosh, there's light coming in. And then like you want to lean into that more. So it's not something like, oh, at 5 o'clock, I got to do this. It's like something that you're like, oh my gosh, I feel a little bit better. I want this in my life. Like this is something that you almost like feel like you're coming home to yourself when you're doing practices like that that are taking off all the gunk that you've accumulated through your life. It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. And I always love to say, when we most need self-care is when
Mhm.
we're least likely or able to do it. So when we're most exhausted, people are like, well, you just need to go to the gym. I'm like, oh my God, I can't get to the. Or like when your mind is racing, you're like, well, you just need to meditate. I'm like, I can't meditate. My mind's racing. And so that's why I don't like to call it a practice.
Mhm.
There's a fancy term, autotelic, which means that a process is innately enjoyable.
Mhm.
So this is where once we invoke the shaking or the trembling or the spontaneous pandiculation response, the beauty about this process is we don't have to do it. So it doesn't take mental effort, so I don't have to focus my mind. It doesn't take physical effort because I don't have to use my will force to push myself harder and do all that sort of stuff. And it generally feels very pleasurable.
Mhm.
So what happens is rather than going, oh, okay, look, I'm already exhausted, I'm already stressed, I'm already burnt out, my life is already full. I've got the kids, I've got my work, I've got all this stuff. Hey, all you need is an extra 30 minutes of your day to do this wonderful practice. People are like, I'm already full. I haven't got time. Whereas when we say, hey, look, when you fall asleep at night, do you fall instantly asleep? And if you don't, just bring your legs up and let your body tremble in bed. Or if you wake up in the night, or if you've finished yoga, just do 5, 10 minutes of the shaking because the body is able to release stress and tension in a way that we can't do consciously. So it doesn't take much time, it doesn't take effort. So once we get access to the process, and I'm innately quite a lazy person, this is the thing I love about it. I don't have to drive it. It's not like I have to push myself to do the exercise or keep going. My body just moves itself, and I'm literally just like, hey, I'm just chilling out. I can be lying there watching TV or having a conversation. So it's something that's super easy to build into our day. And when we're most fatigued, when we're most stressed, and we're least likely to use self-care,
Mhm.
all we're really saying to people is, hey, are you able to let go? And of course, most of us can't let go because we're so bound up tight, but we're going, I'm not saying, hey, you're going to go and drive this, make this happen and
Mhm.
find more willpower when you don't have willpower. It's like, can
Mhm.
you just let go of your willpower and just lie there and do nothing and let your body move? It's like, yeah, I can do that.
Mhm.
And that's why it's so significantly different to most of the other practices that we use, which require our time, our energy, and our mental focus and our will force to try and make them happen.
Yeah, which is you're completely right on. It's that exhausting. Like I can't do any more today. And it's like, it becomes, I find a lot of times, especially, women that listen to my podcast are like the high achievers, they just want to check something off their list.
Mm.
Like I did it, but they're not really embodying it. So that's what I love about that too. It's like it's not about checking some things off your list. It's about being just present with yourself and allowing yourself to let your body do its magic and allow it to move back into its state of like innate healing that it was always designed to go back to. So I love that.
Yeah, and then look, another area that's relevant is when we think about spontaneous movement during orgasm. And I always like to raise this because people are like, oh, it's tension and trauma release. It's all about trauma. And it's not that at all. We don't need to go into the story necessarily. We're just letting the body move itself back to life. And
Mhm.
anyone who's ever felt their body spontaneously move and tremble and shake and vibrate and move around during an orgasm is like, this stuff feels good. And
Mhm.
so this is part of the beauty of it is that when the body starts to move and it releases and it relaxes, it feels fantastic. So instead of it being going, oh my God, I've got to go and stretch and I don't like the pain and how that feels, and oh, I've got to do that run and it's time. You're actually going, do I want to lie down and basically have a kind of almost a form of, it's not an orgasm per se, but this sense of my body's going to start to move and shake and release itself, and it's going to feel pleasurable. Be like, of course. How much time and how much energy is it going to take? None. Your body generates it yourself, and you can, as I say, you can do it literally anywhere. People do it in bed. A lot of people use it to help them go to sleep. They tremor, their nervous system calms down. Then they're like, oh, I feel peaceful. They roll over and they'll sleep. Other people use it, in the toilet, like 'cause you don't have to be lying down. You could be standing up. You can use it in any different position. At lunch, they're exhausted or something's happened. They've had a client that's overwhelming, or when I grew up, we had when my kids grew up, I should say, when we were little, we had a process that I called a shuggle, which is a combination of a shake, a cuddle, and a hug, where the kids would come and lie on my body. And there's beautiful videos of mums and dads with young babies or young kids sleeping on their belly while they're lying on the back and they're shaking and trembling. So it's just such a simple thing that we can build into our lives, and because it feels so good, it's something that we're like, hey, this is not an effort. This is simple. I don't have those. I haven't got time and energy to do another thing and tick another thing off. This is something where I can learn to let go and relax and let the body lead me.
Yeah, I love how you gave the example of the moms and dads and their babies because again, the nervous system's co-regulating, and what a beautiful gift that you are in a more regulated state, and now you can share that with your child and do these practices together. Because I think that's another thing
Yeah.
is people often feel that guilt of like I can't take care of myself, but if you can incorporate those practices into your family and realize that you're giving your child a gift by allowing them to feel free to experience that, that's amazing. I love
Yeah,
that.
and in lots of cultures where
Hmm.
shaking and trembling is just a normal part of the culture. Like, let's go back to animals. Dogs are going to do it all the time.
Hmm.
That's just part of how they are. One of the classic examples in indigenous traditions is the Kalahari Bushmen. So I don't know if people have seen the film The Gods Must Be Crazy. So the San people from Africa, and part of their cultural identity is they call themselves the keepers of the shake. And so they deliberately get up in the middle of the night. They do, have a regular ceremony where they will go into this spontaneous shaking and trembling response. Now, they will talk about it as being connecting to the spirit and this healing power and whatever, not necessarily about releasing trauma, but it's just built into their culture. Swahili, traditional Swahili midwives, after a woman gives birth, and she'll give birth standing up with people holding her up on either side, they deliberately keep that woman standing up after birth to invoke the shaking and trembling response, and they won't let her lie down until it comes to its own natural completion, like a discharge. It could be 20 minutes, could be 30 minutes, because they know if they let that woman lie down and the shaking doesn't discharge and release all the stress and trauma from the birth, they basically just say that woman's going to have problems after birth. And then another one that I, particularly love is the ancient samurai warriors had a practice called Seiki Jutsu, which basically was like life force yoga, where they would meditate and their body would start to spontaneously shake, tremble, but primarily move and spontaneously pandiculate. And that was part of their secret practice that helped them be, lethal warriors one moment and then super chilled out Zen masters the next, because they had access to this magic little ingredient, which was something outside their conscious control that generally others were not using. So this is where once we reframe it and we're going, right, oh wow, that person's shaking and trembling, oh, they're calming down, we will start to see it everywhere in our life. Even kids at Christmas, there's too much charge in their nervous system, they can't sit still, or we
Yeah.
start to tremble and shake with anger, or we
Mhm.
see someone public speaking. So when we reframe it, or we see, our teenagers are sitting there and their feet are tapping up and down on the floor, what do we all do? Oh, stop that. Or someone's fidgeting, we start to reframe it like, oh, wow, the body is trying to calm itself down. How can we actually support and enhance that and do that more effectively? Let's deliberately invoke that response and that reflex.
Yeah.
So then it becomes a sort of self-sourcing pudding. It's a forward feedback where every time we invoke it, the body gets a bit more calm. As it gets a bit more calm, it gets easier to invoke it. And then, soon we know it's just something that we naturally do on a regular basis, because if we don't do it, we're like, wow, I can feel all that tension coming back inside me. So we're really just reinstating a natural part of the human experience that in the West, not in a lot of traditional cultures, but in the West, we've all learned to suppress and hold and create tension, have a stiff upper lip, don't let people know we're scared. Don't be vulnerable, don't let go. Our whole Western culture is you're in control. The more you can control it, it's up to you. You can achieve it, you can fix it. And that works beautifully until we hit to the point that's outside our control. And that's where this spontaneous tremoring is just so empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, it's like how you were talking, and like my son, I have a 6-year-old son, and I have a 6 and a 2-year-old, but they're like all over, always moving, like fidgeting, and my one thing that like bothered me is like in school, like they have to sit still on the carpet, and
Yeah.
this was something I had spoken to the teacher about. I was like, he's just moving. He was getting in trouble for moving on the carpet. I'm like, well, he's 6 years old. He's gonna move, and so is it that our society like again, you're talking about the control. Is that where the inhibition is coming from? That our natural tendencies are just getting so suppressed from all this that we lose that connection?
Yeah, this is a beautiful point, because when we think about trauma, okay, and it's wonderful that the body's become much more integrated into the trauma world these days rather than just the old sort of mind, mental health versus physical health.
Yeah.
But we often think about trauma and we're releasing trauma. And when I first started, Kelly, I actually felt a bit jealous, because all these people would come to TRE, they'd have these horrendous trauma stories. And I used to just think, I don't have a trauma story like that. I had a pretty good childhood. I shouldn't be like this. I shouldn't be this stuffed up. I should be more functional. I've had all this privilege. I've had all this stuff, and yet I'm grinding down. So when we start to recognize, you know, trauma effectively is an immobility response. When people are in fight or flight, our system is saying, hey, we've got the capacity to deal with this. Let's take action. Great, that works. But when it becomes an immobility response is when the body says, we need to shut down and contain movement and do not move in order to survive. So when we look at trauma as a state of immobility, and that can either be through muscular tension, which we all get that build up of tension, or it can be a collapse where the body creates low energy. The classic thing of like we have the term playing possum, or if anyone's seen a mouse that looks like it's dead and it's all floppy because a cat's playing with it, the body in those states is generating the low energy. So all your listeners who are going, I'm exhausted, I've got burnout, the nervous system is generating that as a way of protecting itself. The problem's not the tiredness, the
Mhm.
problem's not the exhaustion. That's just a little, light on the dashboard. The issue is that the body is trying to protect itself by immobilizing. Now, the reason I'm saying that was that through doing this work and understanding my own patterns and my own high functioning anxiety, when I was at school, there was a young kid there who these days we would say he has a very violent Asperger's. Now, we didn't have any of those diagnoses. All I knew is he was 6 foot tall, he was twice as big as everyone, and at any moment he could explode and smash things or punch people. So I would go to school, and I actually did get moved by my parents away from the school. There were lots of different reasons, but I never knew this was part of the reason. So I'd go to school, I'd be sitting, in a classroom with this violent individual, nothing to do, not his fault, he couldn't help it. My body wants to run away. I'm scared, but I can't run away. I can't cry. I can't sit there. And so my body has to contain that movement.
Mhm.
And this is why often, kids come home from school at the end of the day, they haven't been able to let their bodies regulate by movement. And so then they're snappy or they're grumpy or they're rude or they're stressed out or we've got to eat ourselves to death because we need to calm down. So when I look back at this from that state of what is trauma to our body, it's any time our body needs to immobilize when it wants to move. So your son's sitting on the floor. We wouldn't call that traumatic. Of course, it's not life and death trauma, and PTSD, and that's very different. But to his organism, it's going, I need to move in order to calm down. And then we just say, sit still. And so immobility becomes something culturally trained.
Yeah.
Don't let the body move. And so effectively that is traumatic to our physiology. It's not trauma, it's not like life and death.
Yeah.
But to our body and our neuromuscular system, we are training it not to spontaneously move and express itself. And that's the same thing with our emotions. The key element of emotions is they are about the movement of our structure. When we cry, our diaphragm tremors and shakes up and down. Our facial muscles wobble and vibrate. Our lips vibrate. So when we think about containing emotions, what we're really containing is movement.
Mhm.
That's what's being held in. And we train that out of ourselves from a young age. And then we wonder why we get to 35 and I'm a bit numb and I can't feel and I'm not feeling a lot of joy. And I've got to force myself to do all these things and life's starting to catch up with us. So this is where a much more expanded, or I use a movement-based model of trauma is so important. Now, it's not to discount that people have had life and death trauma. That's different in a way, and it's significant, because everyone's these days like, we're all traumatized, and we are, but we're all carrying unresolved chronic tension, which is effectively these immobility, protective, traumatic patterns in the body, including that state of eventually the highest state of that shutdown response is exhaustion. It's the
Mhm.
same with depression. We go, depression, oh, it's a problem having low energy. Burnout, it's an issue of low energy. Well, I'm going to tell you, that's not an issue of low energy. The problem is that in the lead up to that, the nervous system is so highly activated and defended, and it's not working that the body goes into a shutdown and creates low energy. Um, so yeah, this is where it's such this whole bigger pattern in our Western culture. We are basically trained out of this neurogenic, spontaneous movement response. We're trained not to move around when we want to run around. We're full of energy and my body wants to move and grow and develop. We're trained not to cry, not to laugh at inappropriate times, not to express. And all these patterns start at a very young age, so it becomes heavily ingrained, and we lose this connection with this shaking and trembling response. So that when it does erupt, we're like, oh my God, that's a symptom of anxiety, PTSD, I've got shock, I've got something wrong with me, rather than going, hey, this is about being deeply connected to the human organism and how it naturally organizes and relaxes itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that and just at the spectrum of that because, a lot of times you can look at that, like the example of my son, like, that can very much easily be overlooked and dismissed and be like, oh, that's not, no, nothing happened to me. I don't understand why I feel this way. But when you share about, that and how it can be a full spectrum and when we are not able to fully express ourselves, like that does build up. And especially kids where you have the belief systems being developed at that time, that's huge and can really impact them throughout their entire life. So for someone who, has maybe been shut down and is in that very low energy state, and now they are just wanting something different, and they're with TRE, if they're so inhibited in their like natural movements, like how does that person start to then allow these movements to come freely through their body?
Yeah, so part of the beauty of the process is that we bypass the thinking mind.
Mhm,
So we're just using muscle fatigue to bring the shaking on.
mhm,
And what's important is recognizing that that pattern of holding and bracing, it's not a conscious pattern, all right?
mhm,
If it was a conscious pattern, all we would need to say to the listeners is, hey, everybody, just let it go, become enlightened, and go on your way and have a great life. So it's not a conscious pattern. And the chronic holding and tension is similarly, it's not a conscious pattern.
mhm,
But the beautiful thing is in the tremoring or the TRE, and there's many different modalities and practices around the world. TRE is just a modern Western, trauma-informed neuroscientific perspective and way of working with it. So it's not that TRE is the thing; it's this spontaneous movement. TRE is just one model or pathway. But when we access the spontaneous movement reflex, that's being generated in the same part of our nervous system that's creating the tension. So in response to the question, the answer really is you don't have to let it go. This is the whole problem. It's not up to you. You lie down, you let your body let itself go. So we take ourselves out of it rather than, oh, how do I fix this? How do I do this? You're going, your body's got you. Your body's got your back. Your body has got this. It knows what it's doing.
mhm,
And one of the beautiful things is because it's not then driven by the conscious mind in our cortex, people will find that it creates levels of relaxation and freedom that we can't create consciously. So it's really, common that after the very first time people experience the trembling, they'll get up and they'll say something like, I feel like I've been meditating for 3 hours. I
mhm,
feel so relaxed. How did this happen? Well, it's happening because we're not consciously creating it. Our body has the capacity to generate and hold the tension. It's all happening unconsciously. If it's not, just let it go and be enlightened, but it also contains the pathway to release that. So, because we're bypassing the thinking mind and we're accessing the body's own ability to let it go, the body has infinitely more capacity to let go of the stress and the tension and those patterns than we have at a cognitive level. And this is a significant point. I know for your listeners, Kelly, that self sabotage and people pleasing and all that sort of stuff is a huge issue. And
mhm,
what's important to recognize again is if that pattern was a cognitive pattern, then all you'd need is a little bit of information, make some different choices, and you'd all be fixed.
mhm,
But those patterns happen from a very, very young age, generally from a precognitive age. So we're not going to have words or story, they're in our system. And
mhm.
so this is where getting access to the part of our system that's generating those patterns, it's like, getting the key to the cell that we're locked in that we can't ever seem to get out of because our organism, our body has the capacity to unwind these processes because it's in that exact same part of our organism and our body that's generating them in the first place.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's just like that wisdom of our body. It's there and everything is stored there until we allow it to be released. And it's so profound. For someone who's listening and they're like, okay, how do I start? Like, what is the first step that that person could take today just to start to integrate something different into their life?
Mm. So look, pre-COVID, this was one of the positive things that came out of COVID. Pre-COVID, people would always learn TRE either in a workshop or with a TRE provider, and they're in around 80 countries around the world, and you can find them at TRE Global or traumaprevention.com or treglobal.com. But during the pandemic, of course, we couldn't work face to face and we couldn't travel, so we started doing it online, and it works really well through telehealth, like any other telehealth thing. But when I was, well, I was in Melbourne, all right. Now, Melbourne was the most locked down city in the entire world. We had the longest
Gosh.
lockdowns for the most significant, and most significant, you had a 1 kilometer radius you could walk in for like 30 minutes a day.
Mm,
Luckily, and we're very privileged, our government also had supportive measures for people who'd lost their income and, sort of
mhm,
we would call it the dole or job start payments or new start or supportive
mhm,
payments. So I lost all my income. I couldn't work,
mhm,
but I was getting government benefits in order to survive. I was
mhm,
very keen to try and do something that and not just live because my partner, who was also a physiotherapist, she was an essential worker. She was working at nursing homes. She
mhm,
was working her guts out 10 times harder, putting all the PPP on and off. I was getting more money than her by doing nothing, whereas she's working her guts out to keep. So I was like, I can't just do nothing and have a good time and have a holiday. And so I created an online TRE course. Now, this was the first time it had been taught like this in the world, and there was people like, oh, it's not going to be safe, and you need someone there to hold their hand and make sure they're okay and all that sort of thing. So since that time, it was initially free to help people through the pandemic. There's been more than 14,000 people have done this online course, filmed on my iPhone. It's not fancy, but it's fantastic material. It's got,
mhm,
a framing. It talks about polyvagal theory and understanding the nervous system and how the tremors fit in. But then it has 3 guided sessions. So the vast majority of people can learn this technique just through an online course for less than the cost of a single therapy session. And again, the whole point of it is that it's not about going, oh, you need to keep seeing me. It's like once you learn how to use it, how to regulate it, then you've got it for life. So that course is at trecourse.com. It's also got a 3-tiered payment system. So people pay a price based on their income because there's people from countries all around the world. And, 50 Australian dollars might be nothing in Australia, but in Somalia, that might be like 3 months' wages. And so people get to choose that. And if there are people who are in financial difficulty, if you've been through a wildfire and you've lost everything, you can also apply to get free access. So, vast majority of people, I tend to these days refer them to that course because you'll get a lot more understanding and background. You'll get 3 guided sessions, and it's much more cost effective than finding me and doing a session with me. But if you are someone who's got a background of, extreme trauma, or it sounds scary, you're like, oh, I'm not sure about this, or I'm uncertain. The course has a screening tool so you can work out and go, no, I'm going to be okay. And if not, then you can find a TRE provider, as I say, in around 80 countries in the world. And they'll take you through the process. They'll teach you the exercises. They'll teach you how to self-regulate it. And then you've got it for free for the rest of your life.
Amazing. I'll put everything in the show notes. Is that the best way for them to connect with you through that website?
Yeah, if the best way to connect with me is just through trecourse.com.
Mhm,
They can find me that way. And again, the one of the elements, David Bess, and I didn't develop TRE also, Kelly. It was developed by a guy called David Besselli, and it was also built on the back of other people in, body work like Alexander Lowen and William Reich and other people. So he was just the person who put it into this process. But one of the things that got me so excited and on board with this process was that when David first developed it, he was working in, war zones and natural disasters. And, part of it was we can't bring in a Western therapeutic model and we can't fly in 10,000 psychologists to do 15 sessions with 200,000 people who've just been through a tsunami. And so, what got me so passionate about it was the empowerment side of it, going, hey, all I have to do is to reframe shaking this as a positive thing, teach you how to access it, teach you how to regulate it. And I'll never forget when David said this in a workshop one day. He sort of said, look, in TRE, the tremors are the therapists. So, the
mhm,
reason I'm saying that is when people are listening to this, I don't want you to connect with me. You're welcome to if you need me. I do. I want you to go and do the course or find a TRE provider. But ultimately, it's about people connecting with themselves and
mhm,
finding that innate resource, that organic wisdom that's inside us that wants to heal us, that wants to bring us back to life, wants to reawaken us. It wants us to be invigorated and joyful and be in a, really grounded, honoring, self-honoring relationship of being of service and benefit to others, but not costing ourselves. Our organism wants that. And so when we learn how to access it, then literally we've got access to this pathway forever. And you don't have to keep connecting with me. I'm not really important. What's important is this getting in relationship with this spontaneous movement reflex that's inside every single one of us.
Yeah, I love that. And it is like so, I mean, when you talk about that power from within, it's like we all have it. And I think we're so quick to relinquish our own authority to sources outside ourselves. And it's like, it's like Dorothy and the ruby slippers. It's like she always had the power to go home. She didn't realize it until someone told her, like, you've had it all along. And it's like that is what we have. We have that power within ourselves. And I'm so grateful for everything you shared today about TRE and about the body and the nervous system, and just really allow people to see shaking through a different lens and realize that it is your body advocating for you and helping you. So thank you so much for everything that you shared today.
You're welcome, Kelly. It's really grateful to be able to share this information. Yeah, for me, I relate. It was just such a relief. It was the first time I was like, oh my God, I've got relief in my body.
Yeah.
We get hope. We're like, oh, maybe there is a way. Now, it's not a magic bullet. It's not going to magically fix everything in your life. We still have to do everything and live, but it does like open that, that pathway of like, wow, if I keep going, that I know you're into your analogies like with Dorothy and the red slippers. What's coming to mind for me, it hasn't come to mind previously, but the sense of the yellow brick road. It's literally like when I first experienced it, like maybe there is a way through.
Mhm.
Oh, wow, maybe, just maybe. Now, it doesn't mean it's life simple and everything's perfect and all those things, but it's there. It's something we can come home to, and it's always there, and it's inside us. So yeah, I really appreciate the chance to share that, and yeah, hopefully many of the listeners, you'll go and check out the course, learn TRE, find a provider, and just it becomes part of your life, just like a dog shaking. It's simple and easy, so it's always there for us.
Yeah, I love that. And like I said, I'll put everything in the show notes. So definitely check out the course and just take this. If you're listening to this, maybe take it as a nudge from the universe that this may be the next step in your path to really open yourself up to new possibilities. So thank you so much again. And again, thank you for everyone who tuned in today. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If there was something in this episode that really resonated with you or a message that stuck with you, please share it with someone else. It's only through sharing these messages that we can start to rewire our minds to feel empowered and live the life that we truly desire. Please subscribe so you never miss an episode. And again, thank you so much for tuning in to Rewiring Health.